Welcome to the Directing Animation Livecast with Scott Weiser. Now that I'm done directing the development and first episode of the second series of Spacestation Animation, I'm joining up with Steamroller Animation to push the boundaries of the art form. Thanks to the support of so many of you, I'm continually developing more than 10 dynamic feature film pitches while mastering the art of telling deeply meaningful stories. Today our guest is Glenn Harmon, who has been on the show before. And if you don't remember his bio, he has been a storyboard artist at many different studios. And you'll note that he's worked on projects such as Boss Baby, and there's so many that I've forgotten them. But when we last talked about him, he was head of story on a film called Luck at Skydance Animation. That film changed a lot. They changed the director, the head of story obviously moved on to Dreamworks. And so, but he still had a big impact on that film probably. And most recently, he was head of story on Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. So anything else you'd like to add to that, Glenn?
I'm really amazing. No, I'm just kidding.
It's true.
I've worked on. I've been very blessed to be able to work at Sony, at Dreamworks, at Netflix, at Skydance, and now I'm at Warner Brothers, which sounds weird because today is the release day of Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. We can talk about that a little bit later, but I'm super proud of the team and the opportunity to have been part of Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken story team.
Yeah, I actually saw your post this morning on LinkedIn that said, I'm now at Warner Brothers. Yeah. And I don't know if it's that weird because we know that these films, you finished working on them a while ago, and so
6 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked on it. I worked on that movie for nearly 2.5 years.
Wow.
I worked on it for 2.5 years. And for half of that time, I was a story artist. The other half, I was the head of story. And the latter half, just to be clear, I wasn't fired from being the head of story.
Yes.
But yeah, so we wrapped up in December for story. And then I knew that we had 6 solid months before this movie was going to come out. That's the way it goes. And I've worked on 2 other projects at DreamWorks since then.
Oh, really?
And now I'm on at a completely different studio. That's just the way it goes.
Did you work on those projects from beginning to end, or did you hop off with those projects?
No, animation just takes forever, right?
Yeah,
it
does.
Big, long, collaborative marathon of a process.
Yes, it is.
And for me, it was, yeah. And for me, I started on a project and it looked like it was really picking up steam. And then there was a hiccup in the project, and they kind of went back to writing. And then I hopped over to another project, did a few sequences, and then an opportunity came for me over at Warner Brothers. I decided to take it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's first start out by showing a clip from Ruby Gillman that you shared with me. And we're going to have the audience watch that a little bit, and then we'll chat a bit about it. Yeah, I know you have a Ruby Gillman art of book that you'll kind of show us some of the storyboards in, which will be great. And we'll talk more about process and some questions that viewers actually have that have asked me about. And also I'm transitioning into, pitching, like almost getting a full feature funded and that sort of thing. That's coming nearer and nearer. So we want to chat about that as well, see what kind of knowledge we can share. So here we go.
No running in the halls.
With the Kraken running loose, you could use a bodyguard.
Aw, you're sweet. The monster could be lurking around any corner.
I'd fight it for you.
Chelsea! Can I talk to you? Okay, everyone out. Private talk time. Bye. So, what's up?
Chelsea, about last night, I am sorry that I ran...
Apologies are so corny. Just skip to the part where you tell me everything.
Look, you were here on land one day, and you already fit in. I've been here all of my life, and I still feel like a freak. I just want to be Ruby Gillman, normal teenager.
Ugh, boo. Where's the fun in that? Ruby, you're a giant kraken. Don't you think you could aim a little bit higher than normal teenager? Oh, my cute little floppy baby guppy girl. You know what you need?
Great hair and a mermaid tail.
No, but it would help. What you need, Ruby Gillman, is to see how great your life could be. You need a Super Sea-Girl Ditch Day!
Okay, let's do it.
Yay!
Just 4 more days until prom, the last evening of joy before entering the drudgery of adulthood.
I bought a ticket to life, rose-colored eyes, made a home in halls of mirrors. It was all fun and games, love what I played, but now I see a little clearer. The more that I see myself, the less that I know about me. Was riding the carousel.
This day's been amazing. I mean, 7 seasons, 7 hours. And don't get me started about how wrong they got the crystal jellyfish in the Marine Biologist Quarterly. Sorry. Am I geeking out too much?
No. I still can't believe your mom hid all of this from you.
Hiding is surviving. That's the Gillman family motto.
Mottos are stupid. That's my motto. I hate hiding.
But you're crushing it at school. Everyone loves you. You really do have everything.
Ugh, no, I don't. Ever since the Battle of the Trident, all us mermaids have been in hiding. I couldn't take it anymore. I felt trapped, so I ran away. But when I ended up at Oceanside High, I was alone. No one could see the real me. And then I found you, my Super Sea-Girl bestie, and now everything is right in the world.
If it wasn't for this whole mermaid versus Kraken war, you and I could be this free all the time.
Oh, sure, yeah. But I mean, 2 teenage girls can't fix history.
Wait, what's the first rule of being a mathlete?
Never talk about being a mathlete?
No, we have to evaluate the problem. Chelsea, come on. There must be some way to end this war so you won't have to hide from the Krakens, and I won't have to become a prophesied princess warrior of an interspecies vendetta.
Well, there is one way.
So yeah, lots to talk about in there. One thing we were talking about as the clip played is the size relationship and how challenging that can be to manage these 2 characters who are supposed to become super sea besties or whatever she says in the movie.
Super Sea Girl besties.
Sea Girl besties, that's what it was, yeah. And yet they're way different in size, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a challenge because Ruby is the size of a building. You know, she's a gigantic Kraken, sinker of ships, all that junk. And she's supposed to be massive. And Chelsea is just the, a human-sized mermaid. Maybe her tail's a little bit longer and bigger than Ariel's, but she's just kind of a normal size, And so, but composing those shots in story, it's kind of almost no big deal because we can draw them however we want.
Yeah.
But when we hand it off to layout, they've got to actually deal with that.
Yeah.
And they have to really figure out what that space looks like without filling the frame with Ruby and then barely having enough representation for Chelsea. So it's an ongoing thing. And you can see as you watch the movie, sometimes there's a little bit of variation. Sometimes some characters are really, 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 really small to emphasize how big Ruby is. And sometimes they're a little bit bigger to cheat it so that we can kind of see them and empathize with them a little better.
Yeah, and I've seen that in a lot of projects. Even projects you wouldn't even think that you would have to keep resizing these characters, you do. It's kind of like the balloons in Up, where they had different versions of the house balloons, because sometimes the balloons would just become noise. You couldn't even see them because they were so small. But sometimes when you were too close, they would be huge. They would be enormous, like 3 people high or something.
Yeah,
like that, right?
like unbelievably big. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun though. It's fun, and CG definitely helps. But here's the other thing. This is kind of interesting. I always thought it would be easy to just grab the scale tool and shrink everything down, but it does not work like that. The rig doesn't scale well, and the surfacing does not resize very well. I think they had I think it was 25% is as much as they could scale her in either direction.
Wow.
So So that might be generous. It might be even less, maybe like even 15%. But
Wow.
you just don't have, you can't just shrink her down just because it's in a computer. Computers, there are still rules and things that you have to do and watch out for. So it's complicated, man. It always takes thought and brains to do this stuff.
Yeah. Now you're making it sound like story is the easy part. I'm sure it's not the easy part. I noticed that was one of my favorite things about it was how things were composed in the film, how things cut. The flow was very nice. Obviously the animation style is really cool. Those probably would be the things that stood out to me. You wanted to speak more to that?
Sure. Let's talk about the first thing real quick, though. You said the story is not super easy, and story is not. It's a challenge every time, especially when you're working with an original intellectual property. You hear about original IP, or like the opposite is like a sequel. Where you have a bunch of characters or a world that it's already inhabited. You already know the character. You already know who this person is and what kind of journey they've been on and where they need to go from here. So if you look at Poe, you can already be like, okay, he's a bit of an idiot, but he's lovable and he's cute and but he's good at what he does, and so you can kind of project where he's going to go next.
Yeah.
When you have a brand new character and a brand new world and a brand new everything, nothing is free.
Yeah.
You can't. Nothing is. You can't take advantage of anything because you're creating everything. And it is amazing to me to see how these things get done because it just takes so much. And it goes through, I always look at the director as the filter, not the source of everything, but the filter for everything. Because guess what? He gets notes from top and he gets notes from down below. He gets from the left and the right and everywhere. And so the director has to take all of this stuff and funnel it through a filter and then come out with something that they feel is good, cohesive, coherent, and something that can tell a good story and be entertaining.
Yeah.
And so my hat goes off to Kirk D'Amico and Farron Pearl. They were our directors on this project, and then Kelly Cooney, who was our producer. She definitely weighed in and had her say on a lot of different things. And so they took a lot of stuff. And we had a really good story team. In fact, that's what this little book. I think the light is a little weird, so I'm gonna leave it there for just a second.
It took us a second, and then you'll see it. Overboard. There we go. It came into focus.
Is it there?
Yep.
So it's the art of the Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken story team. And you don't see these very much, maybe if ever. This might be the first of its kind, where the book
it's all storyboards, right?
It's only storyboards.
Yeah.
The idea is, like, up here in this corner, you see the name of the artist. In this corner, you see the sequence name from the movie. So it doesn't represent the entire movie, but it does represent every story artist, which I think is fun and unique.
That's awesome.
But it's cool because we had 22 different story artists who were credited on this movie, even though at any given time we had maybe 10, 10 at a given moment. But it's a challenge, man. You get a chunk of the movie or a little sequence, which is 3 to 5 pages.
Yeah.
And you have to live with it, draw it, think about it. And I think we talked about this, Scott, last time, but the job of a story artist is a challenge because you have to wear all these different hats.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be an artist. You have to be able to draw. You have to be a director. You have to be a writer in some cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you have to be an actor. You have to be an editor. You have to be a cinematographer, right? You have to do all of these things and do it quickly enough that you can help who's ever watching this, help them understand what the movie can be, right? Because everything I do is we're just pitching ideas, trying to share, like, what if, and we're showing this stuff. And then director and editor and producer and then obviously executives, they give notes and say, this has got to change. What about this? Change that. And love this. Sometimes they do say that.
Yeah.
And it comes together and it's a sweet experience. And then when you get all those artists together, all 8 or 10 or 22 to put that thing together, then you have a whole screening and you're thing. But it's hard. It's a challenging job.
Yeah.
But then of course that's my perspective. There are the other artists who contribute in, whether it's in layout or animation or viz dev or scene finaling, right? I mean, everybody's contributing to this to make a beautiful project at the end.
Yeah.
And they do an excellent job.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple other hats you forgot though. You listed off like 10 there, but there's also designer. Like something I found as I've been storyboarding this animatic is I have to design things on the fly and figure out different details enough to be clear, you know. And obviously you'll have somebody come in and really refine that design, but you have to sometimes even like a character, if it's TV, you know, you might be designing that character on the fly, you know, and throwing that character to the
It
woods.
happens. I'll be honest. In feature, it doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
Mostly that stuff. There's a design, a visual development team that does a lot of stuff. So I don't do that one very much. But I think you're right. I think that it happens, frequently where people have to design either a prop or an environment or another person.
Absolutely. Cool. So we've talked a lot about storyboarding. This board artist that I've been working with, fantastic board artist, he asked what it was like to transition from being a story artist to being the head of story. What are the growing pains?
That's a good question.
Yeah,
it's a good question. So you mentioned in the intro that I had been a head of story before on a separate project. And I'll speak to both. I'll try to keep this both comprehensive but brief. The first time when I went from being just a story artist, had never had the experience before, and then going over to be a head of story, I think it was interesting because as a story artist, I kind of like put the blinders on. This is my sequence. This is what I work on. I get the pages, I work on this. Beginning, middle, end, here's this, here you go. And I plug it back into the whole animatic. But as a head of story, you have to share that director's vision of the entire movie and see acts 1, 2, and 3, the setups, the payoffs, the arcs, all of that as you so that when you're launching things, you can say, now this part is an amazing payoff to something that happened earlier. We'll show you what that is, or at least we'll explain it. And so I think that one of the greatest tools, what's your buddy's name?
Brant Moon.
Brant. I know Brant. One of the greatest things that you can do, Brant, is communication. That's it. Like, know where you want to go and then know what tools you need to use to get there. That can be used. Every story artist needs to know that anyway. But you, Brant, you need to know what that is for the whole 30,000-foot view of the entire movie. It's a hard thing. I know it's challenging, but it's just a shift in perspective. Like when you're looking at just your sequence, yeah, you've got that whole thing. You live there. You are that director. But then when you step back, you just have to see the whole thing, and you'll have questions, and you'll want to kick against that. You want to do that early too, by the way. You want to kick those up, and you want to work with your director, figure out what those ideas are, figure out what the director wants to do, and then the next one is support it. Support it with all your heart, because you are. I'm still talking to you, Brent. You're the keeper of the director's vision. Right, because not every story artist has access to the director at all times, and not even you do. But you have to understand where the director is going and be supportive, because they do have access to you, and they are going to come to you with these questions like, "I don't get why this character does this. She's so stubborn," or like he can never make up his mind. In this scene. Well, yeah, here, but he hasn't learned his lesson yet, or whatever the thing is. So if you can understand that 30,000-foot view and communicate that well to your team, then you're in a good place. always listen to them because they only want to help you, and then be available to them. It may be challenging because you want to get to your own work. Maybe have like office hours. Say, I'm open 2 to 4. Come in anytime. Email me anytime. Don't expect an answer until between 2 and 4. But, so you got to have like that line in the sand, but make yourself available in some regard, in some way. But it's hard. It's hard. And then so that was the first one. The second one, when I made that transition from being the story artist on the team of Ruby Gillman to then being the head of story on the team, that one was a little different because I already kind of knew what was going on with the movie, and I knew the team really well. And we had a head of story who became the co-director. Farron Pearl actually started as the head of story.
Oh, interesting.
She was the head of story, and then there was a change up in the leadership, and we got a new director, and which was Kirk D'Amico. Kirk invited Farron to be his co-director on the movie, and it left a vacancy, and then I was asked to fill it, to be the head of story. So I already kind of knew what was going on with the movie and the dynamics of the team. I kind of already knew. So, and I had the experience of being a head of story before. So I kind of stepped into that one a little easier.
Yeah.
Even though it's always a challenge, but I think it always comes back down to communication and just let people know, hey, this is what I know. We don't know everything yet, and we're still just kind of learning and growing, but thanks for your patience. That we said that a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the reason that I keep working with Brant is because he's such a good communicator, and he really vibes with me on a story level. We were developing a series called Pirate Crabs at Spacestation Animation, and
Cool.
the project's not going to happen. Well, likely. It's not very likely. It could.
Yeah.
It could. You never know. We actually finished
That's
the whole first episode.
Thing about
Yeah.
That's the other thing about animation that unfortunately is a common occurrence.
Yes.
You and I work at the front end.
Yes.
So we're exploring ideas. We pour our heart into this, but there is absolutely no guarantee that this is actually going to be made. So we put our heart, our love into this thing just to see these darlings get sacrificed. and we just have to get back up and go again. That's kind of the unseen problem about story, is you have to love something and immediately let it go, and then fall in love with the next thing right away.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge, but it's the job.
Yeah. And it is in pursuit of, you hope something better, right? You hope that you end up with a film that is really just so strong and it moves people. And yeah.
Well, and it happens. Of course, it happens. I've only actually made 3 movies that have actually come to the screen. I've worked on dozens, but 3 have come to the screen. Hotel Transylvania, actually 4. Hotel Transylvania, Smurfs, which is incredible. You're welcome, world. And then it was a Boss Baby, and now Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. So I've been working here for 15 years. I've been working in this industry 15 years, and 4 movies. I've got friends in lighting and animation that have 20 plus.
20 plus, yeah.
And I'm working on my 5th.
It's great though. Yeah. Do you, and I'm sure you look at some of these projects that you believe really could have been great, and then they get canned for reasons that you probably disagree with, and again, you still have to move on from that. How do you deal with that?
I'll tell you, it's kind of silly, but you focus on the people, and you focus on where you're at, and it's like the day in and day out, and every now and then. Actually, here's another one. I think this is probably a little bit more relevant. The people are wonderful, and being able to work with other story artists is really great, but you could still get into that spiral, that downward spiral of anger and bitterness. The antidote to that anger and bitterness is talking with students, because they are so
eager. Yeah.
They're so excited, and they remind me of how lucky I am to be here. And so when I am filled with that gratitude, sure, we take the lumps. But if I can remember how amazing it is to have a job, to be able to draw, think about stories, play, and have serious conversations about the placement of a fart joke, that's pretty sweet. We're pretty lucky.
Or you get on Alvin and the Chipmunks 3, we did get a note from the executive that there weren't enough fart jokes, and the guy behind me was the one assigned to animate it, and I think he animated that thing like 20 times. He did all these different options. He was a very fast animator. Mike Locke, if you're ever watching this, shout out to you, because he's part of the reason I'm a fast animator, is because I learned a ton from him. But yeah, he was doing all kinds of different fart gags, and I actually don't even remember the one that made it in.
Scatological humor sells. Okay, it does, and the 20 million giggling boys can't be wrong.
I animated probably the most epic fart joke I've ever seen on King Julien, the Netflix series, where there were 3 farts that propelled these characters through the air, and they spun around in circles and filled the screen up. It was.
See? That's fantastic. And that was your job. You were paid to do that.
I was paid to do that, and I felt so like noble and artistic as I did it too.
Your contribution has been accepted.
It's like one of the greatest. I should win a Nobel Peace Prize or something. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
But yeah. Anyway, it was fun. It was great fun to work on all these different projects. But yeah, so you talked about how your book talks about different things to do and not to do. You want to give any examples of that?
Sure. Well, sort of, but not really. I mean, there in this book, there's nothing. There's nary a word in this book. There's no words. I'm not talking about anything.
Oh, it's just being an analysis.
This book is just it's a compilation. Can you see it okay here?
Just turn it, tilt it a bit more toward the camera. There we go.
Like this?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So it's a compilation of it's the story artist who worked on this. So here, I'll show you the very beginning. At the very beginning, there is a layout of each story artist who worked on it with how they draw Ruby Gillman, which is interesting because in feature, you can draw her pretty much however you draw her, just as long as you're consistent.
Yeah.
In television, you have to draw each character pretty much on model. You want to stay pretty close so that the animators overseas or wherever can stay pretty faithful to the boards that you worked on.
Yeah.
But so there's a tiny little love note right up front to just say thank you to the artist. But then inside here, there are examples of boards, and really it was just a way to say thank you to the story artists for what they had done. Nobody ever looks at storyboards. It's kind of like looking at the blueprints of a beautiful building.
Yeah.
So nobody walks into a building like, I got to see the blueprints of this. But if you're an architect in training, you want to know how that was designed. So in here, you can see examples. I wish I could show you a little better, but you can
That's
see
great.
examples
Yeah.
of boards. This is Joanne Matt. She is an incredible story artist.
Oh yeah, the art. Oh yeah.
Huh?
The drawings are amazing.
Yeah, the drawings are amazing. This is Terry McAllister, really story artist. She does really good character work, a lot of fun action and all that stuff. But you go through here and you see the difference. I gotta tell you, the biggest thing when you're working in story is there are 2 things. You have to be fast. You just have to be fast.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon to do 100 drawings per day.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be fast. And then the other thing is you have to be clear. That's it. It's speed and clarity. That's it. I mean, you'll grow in your composition. You'll get better at your comedy. You'll think of funnier or more exciting ways to do action as you grow. But you need to draw fast and you need to draw clear.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I think there's a benefit to the student in that book. to look at the different variety of drawings in there, but you can still see that they were clear in their boards.
Absolutely.
And you can tell what's happening in the action, especially when there's no dialogue. That was done intentionally. There's no dialogue. The focus on that is on the artist. It's not on the movie. Because the movie was the subject of their work, obviously that plays a big part in it. But it's in honor of the artist. That's why it doesn't represent the entire movie. It's not even sequential. It is about the artist who did the work. So you pick up that book with the idea in mind to look at how did this work? You know, how did they go from an emotional moment into this high octane chase?
Yeah.
Or how did they make that moment funny? How did they do that with just a few panels?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what you can get from this. And you know, I'm talking about it like I'm selling it. I'm not selling it. This is not for sale.
Yeah.
Nobody can buy this. This is a gift to the story team, and just to let them know how much I love them and how grateful I am for their work. The studio's not selling this, nor am I. But it's but anyway, if a student has an opportunity to look at this, and maybe eventually at some point this will be available, but the student to look at this will notice that, you know, how a sequence is built.
Yeah.
A little bit more than they would in an art of book.
Yeah, something that is purchasable. And holy cow, these books here. Yeah, this is Hell's Moving Castle.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you've seen these, but yeah,
these are amazing. These are amazing. That's obviously much better.
Yeah,
because
his drawings are so tight. Yeah, they're really tight.
Yeah.
He draws the characters.
And those are actually probably to scale, aren't they?
Oh yeah, you can look at the movie next to these boards, and they are almost exactly the same.
Well, I don't mean that. I mean, like, he probably drew it this big.
Oh yeah, that's the size he drew.
I heard that Miyazaki draws really small.
Yeah. Well, I think this is like a page, so it's 8.5 by 11. So they do shrink them down slightly, I think.
Yeah,
but
those are incredible. That's the master class right there. What you have, I've got I wouldn't even call this a TED Talk. This is, you know, by comparison, this is an afternoon conversation.
An afternoon conversation, yeah. The masterclass. As I was drawing this animatic as warm-ups, I would draw Miyazaki storyboards, and it's like, this doesn't really feel like a warm-up. This felt like a humiliation, like a humbling. You know, it's like, oh wow, like how did he even think of that, and how did he, you know, think of all of that at once? That was the mind-blowing result of that exercise. I think it is a good exercise though, because then it started to kind of expand my mind and what was possible, and improve my drawings and everything, improve my compositions, and how things flow. And yeah, it's really cool. These books are cool. They're not very cheap. I think they're going up in price too, but
well, because they're a limited run, and there aren't that many in print, and everybody wants them, so the demand goes high.
Well, in the Ponyo one in particular, because he did watercolors on the boards, that one has gone through the roof in price. I have The Wind Rises, which also has watercolors, but it's not quite as popular of a movie as Ponyo was. But it's a fantastic movie. It's a movie that ages so well. Like it gets better every time I see it. So yeah.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. So let's get more into process and stuff. Because something, you know, we've talked a lot about drawing. How does pacing come in, and how much of an influence do you have on that? Because I know you probably work with an editor who takes the boards and edits them together. How does that process look?
It is so we have there's a program that a lot of the industry uses. It's called Flix, and a lot of people have varying opinions about it. But one of the best things that it does is you do your work and you upload it into this Flix, which is a bridge over to the editorial team, and they can get it downloaded and put it together. But what's kind of cool about it is you can pitch it inside of Flix, inside of the program, and record it, and it gives you it takes your timing and duplicates that on the editorial track. So on the editing track instead of Avid. So if I'm like pitching through an action sequence and I'm like, and then he jumps over the car and he goes under the bus and he jumps over and he goes down the building. So if you do something like that and you go, it will send over these panels for like 4 frames, 8 frames, 2 frames, just depending on how fast you're clicking. And then if you get to the point where it's like, and then he arrives at the ledge and he looks down, and you wait for that. Then it's going to come in, 30 frames. Oh, this is for 45 frames, and they can get that and they know exactly what it is. So when I pitch, I kind of have a metronome in my head where I'm kind of at this pace right here.
Mm-hmm.
Click, 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 about 12, maybe 10, 8 to 12 frames. 8 to 12 frames is about my standard, if I'm kind of going through it. But then, but I do love those moments, man. I love those moments where you can break out of that. So there's a rhythm that you establish and then you break it. And what's fun about that is it becomes surprising to your audience and it evokes an emotion, whether it's surprise or humor, which go together often, or just even thoughtful. Like I boarded a sequence in Boss Baby where they're having a fight in the airport. Boss Baby and Tim, they're having a fight. Mom and Dad just flew away on a plane and they blame each other for what has just happened. Tim is mad because Mom and Dad are away. Boss Baby is mad because his mission is ruined and he's going to lose his job. And so they're very frustrated at each other and it escalates. And so not only the pacing, but the compositions, they start wider and they get closer and closer and closer because we're getting more and more heated and intimate and frustrated. And we're saying meaner and meaner things. And until eventually Tim says, I wish you were never born, which is the worst thing you can say to a baby. And all of a sudden it stops. And Boss Baby, he has just 2 eye darts. And he fixes his tie, turns and walks away. And it's so effective because you're going da, 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 and it helps that contrast. That's important. And so obviously I was working with the director a lot on that, and I was working with the editorial. They would come back and forth, and we'd see it, and we would kind of make notes. I didn't have a ton of notes. The director knew what he was doing and what he wanted from that scene. So I was helping the director get what he wanted, but he knew where he was going with that, which hopefully your director does.
Yes,
because that's the best.
That's the goal. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. So you've answered this question before, although you were one of my first guests. So I think when I first had you on the show, the question was, what responsibility does a director have to the world with the films we're making, the stories we're telling, right?
Absolutely none. They can do whatever they want. No, I'm just kidding. Well,
it's changed though.
Go ahead.
It's
Did
changed,
you have
though.
a B?
Yeah, it's changed though, because everybody said some form of truth. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Truth. And meaning was something that came up a lot too. And so my question then evolved to become, if my goal is to get the highest clarity of meaning into a story, what approach would you recommend?
Ooh, I would recommend my initial, and this may evolve over time or even in this conversation, but my initial response to that is that you need to give space for those emotions that you've worked so hard to develop.
Yeah.
You need to give space for those things to land and to resonate with the audience, or at least just on screen, with the other character, because I don't know how to feel as an audience until I see it on screen. Now, it's not like I need to be told everything. I'm an active participant. I'm watching this, but I'm still kind of invested, right? But we use reactions to show how people are feeling and to identify with them. So if somebody is offended, like in Boss Baby, not only does the pacing change, but his emotion drops. And here he was being so combative and being so mean and rude,
Yeah.
and now he's silent. And we give that moment to just wait.
Let it settle.
And
in.
the audience instinctively says, too far. You went too far, Tim. That was below the belt. That was a real terrible move. And because we see it in Boss Baby, if we just stayed on Tim, or if Boss Baby just kicked him and, you know, and like they start a brawl, it'd be like, I don't know, it might not have the same impact. But when you go from a heated battle to nothing, it's like, oh, that one stung. And then he almost silently walks away. You know, it's pretty good. But I think the directors, if they know what they want to do, I think their responsibility is they have to know what they want to say. And then they have to know the tools to be able to say it. And whatever that truth or meaning or whatever, you know, these fruity words, they definitely matter. That matters. But there are a few things that humanity responds to. There are a lot of things that a lot of different groups of people respond to individually. But there are a few things that humanity responds to. And I'm not going to list them. I'm not even going to try. Because that's there, but things like I want to belong, or you know, like, or you hurt me, or you cannot control me. You know, those kinds of things, they just exist over and over and over in our movies. People are longing for connection. They don't want to be controlled or manipulated, and that works for the audience as well. So one of the things, and this has been a bit of a soapbox for me lately, because I've been thinking about stories that come across as preachy, and I think preachy stories come across when there are, because there's two sides to every argument, but if one side is weak compared to the other side, then it's preachy.
Yeah,
it's preachy.
Yeah,
because now it says there really is only one way to live, and it's like this, and if you're not doing this, then you're wrong. And it's like that. And then the audience is like, even if it's the side that you're on, you're thinking, that was terrible. But if you have two sides, like I'll just take Spider-Man. You have Mary Jane is going to be killed over here, but a bus of people are going to be killed over here. You know, and how do I do them both? So that's now you have the split. Now it's between the good and the better. And that's what we want. That's what we want in these movies, where we see both sides, and we as an audience, we're stuck in the middle. What is better? You know, should Captain America accept the rules and regulations that you know, the governments have placed on him?
Yeah.
Or should he be his own man? Both of those are good, right? And so now it's an interesting conversation, and then you see his point of view and where he takes you on it. I think that's an obligation and a responsibility that directors have.
Yes.
We need to think about this well enough so that we're not just condescending to our audience, but let's explore things, and let's show how difficult this is between good and better.
And it does,
because that's what life is full of.
Yeah, and it does take a lot of courage to do that, because you have to be willing to let's say you have something you really believe in and you want to say that with a story. You have to be willing to give the other side of that argument enough strength that there could be a possibility that you could lose. You know, and yes, that is scary, especially with a lot of the things we care about now. You know, we don't want to give a lot of room to, you know, I just watched The Judgment at Nuremberg about a year ago. Fantastic film. And they really get you sympathizing with the Nazis. Like, they really get you feeling for the Nazis. And because of that, you're more rocked by it. You're like, how could these people do this? You know, that the opposite, the argument that they're trying to prove, that which is Nazism wasn't good, that is much stronger because the other argument was stronger, not weaker. Yeah. Everything raises up together. Yeah.
Right. Well, and then in the story structure, you have thesis, where the protagonist starts. That's the regular world, the ordinary world.
Mhm.
And then you have antithesis, which is like, that's that new world paradigm is changing. What the heck? Everything I thought I knew, I don't, and I don't understand. And then you have synthesis, where those things come together. And now you're a new, better, stronger character. And whether the world changes around you, or if you change alone, or a couple of characters like in a two-hander, there's change, and we need to see that change. And the more convincing, the more equal we see the good and the bad, the stronger the impact on our audience, because we're like, oh wow, that was hard. And you mentioned this, you said heroes, and it brought up another thing. Heroes are those who are willing to do what no one else wants to do.
Yeah.
So you look at, that's everywhere. You look at those heroes, back, 3 years ago, where in the hospitals, nobody wanted to be in those hospitals, not the patients, not the doctors,
Right.
but the doctors were the heroes who did it.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to, but they did it. And we needed them to. And all of the people who are I forget what they're called now, like necessary workers or something. But all those people who did those jobs kept us alive, literally kept us alive. And they did what they didn't want to do. And then a superhero is somebody who does something that no one else can do. And that doesn't mean that they have a superpower every time, though that often is the case. But it's like, if no one else can do this, that is a superhero.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty cool. I just think that's kind of a fun distinction. But that's like, in that case, your parents are heroes.
Yeah.
Because they do not want to change your diaper, but they did. And they love you anyway.
Over and over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the older I get, the more I appreciate my parents and think they are fantastic compared to, when you're a teenager, you know everything, right? And
they're dumb. They're obviously stupid. And they only want to ruin your life.
Yeah, we don't need films made by teenagers. We need films made by deeply engaged adults, heroic adults. I guess, I would say. So yes, thank you. That was a great discussion. Thanks for coming on the show. Is there anywhere where you'd like people to engage with you? I already have your Instagram down in the show notes. And
yeah, I'm not very good at social media. I will respond if you reach out, but I don't post very much.
Yeah.
Because I am right here. I'm not very good at juggling many different things at once.
Yeah.
A lot of people can do a lot of different things. You are actually one of those guys that can do a lot of different things at once, and you're amazing. I can't do that. So I'll post something from time to time, but really not much. But if you ever want to reach out and you have questions that you want to ask me, I try to get to those within 24 hours. So if you want to reach out to me on Instagram, of the Grateful Dad, but if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, those are like the two socials that I do.
Yeah.
But happy to have the conversation. I always love it. And like I said at the beginning, it's a pleasure for me to be able to talk with those who are just starting out and who are interested in animation, because I think both parties grow from that and are sustained. I think that's really good.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And until next time, I hope we all get a little wiser. Thank you for watching the Directing Animation Livecast, hosted by Scott Weiser, audio version edited by Kira Horowitz, copyright Scott Weiser LLC 2022. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and ring that notification bell.